The first album that kind of cracked my head open was Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run in 1975. I was 12, and I heard the single and just gravitated to the sound and saved my pennies to buy the album and became a big fan. I loved language and books, and so there was also an attention to wordplay and setting of scenes in those songs that must have also been appealing to me. But I'm certain that the first thing I responded to was just that sound. You know, rock and roll for me was just a sound and a kind of an idea that felt really big and all-encompassing, and I heard that in that record. As I went to college and then graduate school in literature, I never saw a separation between the books or poetry or plays I was reading and the music I was really passionate about. My idea of the arts and culture is really capacious. You know, I see things really across now what we call disciplines, right? So it was never separated from me. You know, music and literature, for example, and so I was looking for ways to write about both in my graduate work and to teach about both. In my work in post-colonial literature and post-colonial studies, Black British theorist Paul Gilroy talks about the Black Atlantic and the way that culture moves as a result of the transatlantic slave trade between West Africa, the Caribbean, the United States, and the United Kingdom, and Europe more broadly. And when I heard that idea as a graduate student, which was a pretty complicated idea, and as a music person, I was like, I get that, because there's rhythms that came from West Africa, planted themselves in the United States and in the Caribbean. They kind of circulate around. You get rock and roll, you get soul music. Later on, you get reggae, which translates. So that idea of music traveling was already something I knew, and it was easy for me to think about that in terms of literature. And I found as a teacher that students have that same capacious view of culture, I think, where they're seeing connections across all the things they're listening to or reading or creating. I haven't found that students make those kind of neat divisions that we sometimes try to put on them. As the Vice President for Education and Public Programs at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I got to oversee traditional education programs like K-12 classes for kids and distance learning classes, but also all the programs that we did for the general public, including producing concerts that were there to serve the museum's educational mission, to try to tell the story of the music and where it came from and what it meant to people. It's really cool to try to think, okay, my job right now is to make a case for, or to help people understand why, say, Aretha Franklin is so significant, right? How do I explain that to a fourth grader, a college student? How do we talk about it with fans who know everything about Aretha Franklin and fans of music who kind of know one or two songs but never really thought about her? And, how do you think about that as a whole program? And it really helped me to understand how to really collaborate with your learners, which I felt like I was doing as a professor, but working in the more public space really pushed you on that, because so many people came in with so much knowledge, and people really love to argue about who's in or who's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we were essentially having a constant public canon debate, if you will, about which art matters, why it matters, how we judge, who gets to judge. Those are meaty issues when we think about gatekeeping organizations for the arts. And so it was literally like a public classroom. I continued to be interested in the way in which music is a platform for how people define themselves. And I was a fan of NPR music. As a listener, I went to NPR Music for recommendations about good music to listen to, but also for really deep dive analysis about music in the culture. So it was a job I was really intrigued by. We were really thinking every day how to present music news, and to help people kind of discover new music. But it was really exciting to try to tell stories about the history of the music and contextualize the music in our lives at this moment, right? I mean, when we think about even over the last year and a half and the ways in which artists and audiences used music as a tool to really express the outrage over George Floyd's murder, for example, or, more broadly, the Black Lives Matter movement. People were going to music to talk about the separation and isolation that they've felt under the pandemic. It was a real continuation of the kind of work I've always been interested in. How can I be part of an organization that helps create space for audiences and creators to come together to really dig through the most important issues, that we care about. I was really attracted by the Corcoran's, the set of departments that are part of the Corcoran School. I think it's a really powerful and unique set of departments to think about the visual arts with the performing arts, as well as departments like museum studies or photojournalism. The interdisciplinarity opportunities with those departments together are really, really exciting in terms of using the arts to really get at some of the biggest questions of our time. And I was certainly aware of GW's strong reputation of students' engagement with community service, with the political issues of the day. And so that combination where we can really think about the arts and community engagement, that's really been the through line of my whole career. It seemed like a really exciting and unique opportunity. I would say the first time as I walked into the flag building was how creative the students were, and seeing students kind of working in small pods and moving through this space. I just felt that kind of artistic vitality that you love to see. It's a very vital community, and we have to make sure that we care for it in this time as we hopefully come out of some of the restrictions of the pandemic. Institutions need to be collaborating with their audiences. I'm interested in the way that audiences and creators work together on things. During my time in Cleveland, I was the founding dean for Cuyahoga Community College's Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Humanities Center, which is a humanities center founded on civic engagement. And I really spent those years working very closely with a whole range of community organizations, from arts organizations to public policy organizations. It really resonates with me as I come into this new job because it opened me up to the ways in which sometimes, despite our best efforts in the university and how often we feel like we're throwing open our doors, we can seem like fortresses and we can seem exclusionary. I take that experience to heart as I enter this job about making sure, as we think about how to engage with the community, say in an arts project, it's not that here we come from the university to tell you what to do or that we have all this figured out, but it genuinely has to be in a spirit of collaboration and thinking about the way that we can share our resources and our expertise, but also really hear and value the expertise from outside the university as well. As I get up to speed at the Corcoran, I really want to dig in on where the great partnerships already exist across the departments in the school with community organizations, and how we can really grow those and how we can potentially develop more. When we can collaborate, when we can find that commonality in the Venn diagram about things that'll benefit 2 or 3 organizations, is when we really can do explosive things and I think provide the best opportunities for students. I know some of that is already happening at the school for sure, and I want to bring as much support to that and help faculty and students grow those opportunities. I believe that people we're reminded of how much art and music and theater and photography and sculpture mean to them. I think people really relied on the arts over this time to get through and to make sense of confusion and violence and fear. And I'm hopeful about that. I'm hopeful about the willingness to embrace the arts and to remember that it's essential to who we are. I'm in such an admiration of the faculty and the students for figuring out how to teach and learn in very new ways, on a dime. Pivot that I know so many of our students and faculty did at the Corcoran as creators, right? You're not going to stop creating, but what changes do you have to make? How do we think about audiences differently? How do we really begin to use remote access technology in a more creative way? I don't want to be Pollyanna about the challenges, but I hope that period has taught us some things about access that we can really build on. And one of the things that I would like to do as we begin the fall semester is to really make sure that we record those things, that we really make sure we remember those things that were new and that were breakthroughs so that we can build on them going forward. As we get started, it's a learning time for me to really understand what are the hopes and dreams of the faculty and the students, and so that we build a shared vision about how we want to do our work going forward. So I really want to kind of understand what people most want to do, and then my job is how do we create resources and opportunities to get that work done. It will be my vision to some extent, but it has to be built from the people who are there doing the work. What I'm listening to right now, I would recommend the new Yola album is fantastic. It's fabulous.